Oh, okay. All right. So here's how I'm going to answer this. I think what makes New York so special is that with the history of dance music and the way it's become today, it's probably because it's probably the most important city in the world, and it's so big, millions of people. That's bigger than countries. You know, it probably got, I don't know, 8 million people here, and many genres of music I can think of were important before disco, jazz, and rock and roll, but many things came from here, like hip hop, break dancing, all that stuff. So it is a center point. And I think it's more the nightlife also that people have been attracted to, the discotheques that we've had here that influenced nightclubs all around the world and each other here. And most people think of Studio 54 because it was famous, it was glamorous, it was a theater, and it had movie stars and door policies, you know, to create attention, media, publicity. And there was so many nightclubs all around Manhattan, but also out in Long Island, New Jersey. It was blowing up, you know, in the early 70s, but the late 70s is when it really started to go crazy with nightclubs and discotheques. So I think people recognize that we have so much history here in every different shape, form, and size. So I could answer forever. So by the time I was 10, 11 years old, I started maturing from a baby, and about the age of 11, I discovered the art of DJing by a DJ's 8-track tape. And it changed my life because I heard records blended together, sometimes even harmonically, because it's like as if I understood music, because I used to want to play guitar and piano also. My Aunt Nancy lived next door to us, and she would teach me guitar and piano. And I understood when melodies were connecting, and I knew that I wanted to do this. So I was asking questions about nightlife, and my cousin was telling me about DJs, replacing the bands. And by the time I was 13, I was sure that this is what I was going to do forever. Hard to think that that was 40 years ago. But I don't know. So turning points for me in music is that I can think back of when I was a baby and loving pretty much whatever my aunt was playing. A lot of times it was bossa nova. I found myself attracted to rhythm. Brazilian music, salsa, and funky music was my first love. It could be James Brown, it could be Sly and the Family Stone. A lot of the Motown stuff, I loved it. The kind of stuff that even as a young boy, I get the goosebumps because the change, it was crazy. And then I had a small period where I also liked rock and roll, but great rock and roll. Like I have older brothers and maybe their friends would be listening to the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, and Cream. And I like some songs of each. Until this day, I still listen to it. But I don't love every song, but a lot of them. And that became my influence. Besides Isley Brothers, Motown, Philadelphia. I think when I say Philadelphia, I think of the famous MFSB orchestra, or TSOP is the sound of Philadelphia. I really do in my heart believe that that's where house music was invented in many ways, because of the orchestra being behind so many of the artists that we all dance to. I could think of many. Thelma Houston was on Motown, but Teddy Pendergrass and the 3 Degrees. These are like the early 70s. And then they also became the same musicians that were behind the South Soul Orchestra, the main musicians, and just many other people, including the Jacksons when they went from Motown to Epic Records. It was a Philadelphia sound. So I always credited Philadelphia for giving us the beats that created house, which the drummer was Earl Young. It's all, you could watch this on YouTube, the history. And I think he invented house music with his drums by trying to be different. And let's say how my maestro was Larry Levan, his was the drummer of James Brown. So he was thinking, how could I be different from him? And he would invent different things, and with groups like First Choice, and that's where disco was born, without them even realizing it. I think they invented it. So that's my analysis of my childhood. And then by the time I was 16 or 17, the word disco was becoming really popular because of the discos. And then they were starting to hear a lot of strings, and it started to get pretty, and there were weird things like the Village People, but all combined. Now music was being made all over the world by some incredible people, the Giorgio Moroder, Cerrone, Alec Constantinos. There's so many incredible musicians. And I always noticed that if you think back to the 70s when disco was being made, many of these people were already like adults, 40, 50, classically trained jazz musicians who could read music, and then combining all together, composing, arranging, producing, to make somewhat classical and jazz music into dance music. And that's what pretty much a lot of my roots is the soul, the funk, some rock, and then disco. And then I matured. I was able to cross the bridge from Brooklyn to Manhattan. And, you know, between 18, 19, and 21 was when I really started to embrace all the different styles, mainly the house music, the garage sounds. But you could go to punk rock clubs and industrial clubs, and I was always open-minded to the different sounds. So the birth of electronic music, which eventually became techno, and there's so many different genres from that now. It's like, I call it like the umbrella of dance music. There's the funk and the soul, and then there's the garage and the deep. And under the umbrella, I started to like, I loved most of it. I started to like some here, like some there, and then I collected it all. And what comes out of me as a producer and DJ first, is a collection of all that. So I think that's what people can feel from what I'm doing, is that when I say I like it all, I don't love it all, but you know what I mean when I tell people I like it all. So that's my analysis of the 70s to where I am today.